Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling a big one, congestive heart failure. It affects millions of people, and we're going to see how when this one single pump in your body starts to fail, it can create a massive traffic jam that affects, well, everything. All right, so first things first. When you hear heart failure, you might think your heart just stops, right? But that's not it at all. It's actually more of a slow, gradual weakening. Think of it like this. The body's most important pump is just getting tired. It can't keep up with demand anymore. And that's where all the trouble really starts. So to really get what happens when this pump fails, we first have to appreciate how it's supposed to work. And let me tell you, a healthy heart is an absolutely incredible machine. Okay, get this. Every single minute of every single day, your heart pumps about 5 liters of blood. That's like the entire amount of blood in your body, circulated completely, every 60 seconds. Wow. That incredible flow is what we call cardiac output. It's literally the supply line of oxygen and nutrients keeping every single one of your cells alive. Now, here's a term you're gonna want to remember. Ejection fraction. Sounds technical, but it's pretty simple. It's just the percentage of blood the heart pushes out with each squeeze. See, a healthy heart doesn't actually empty all the way. It pushes out somewhere between 50 and 70% of what's in there. And that number? It's a super important report card on how strong the heart's pump really is. Okay, so what happens when this amazing pump starts to fail? Well, it generally breaks down in one of 2 main ways. And it's not just about the pump being weak. It's about the kind of weakness it's experiencing. And that brings us to the big question. Is it a squeezing problem or is it a filling problem? Because really, that's what it boils down to. Those are the 2 fundamental ways the pump can go wrong. So let's break that down. On one side, you've got systolic failure. Think of this as the squeezing problem. The heart muscle itself is just too weak to contract with enough force to push the blood out. Then, on the other side, you have diastolic failure, and that's the filling problem. Here, the muscle is so stiff and rigid that it can't relax enough to let the chamber fill up with blood in the first place. Remember that ejection fraction we talked about? Well, for systolic failure, the squeezing problem, this is where that number becomes critical. The ejection fraction plummets to below 40%. Just think about that. The heart is pushing out less than half the blood it should with every single beat. That is a huge problem. But here's what's so tricky about diastolic failure, the filling problem. The ejection fraction might actually look totally normal. It could be 60% even. But here's the catch. It's 60% of a much, much smaller amount of blood to begin with. So yeah, the heart is squeezing out a good percentage, but it's a good percentage of a chamber that was never full. It's kind of deceptive. All right, now let's trace the consequences of this failing pump. It really is like a massive traffic jam building up in your circulatory system. So first up, let's see what happens when the problem begins on the left side of the heart. You know, the left ventricle is the real workhorse of the heart. Its whole job is to pump that fresh, oxygen-rich blood out to your entire body. So when it starts to fail, the whole system just grinds to a halt. And just like in a real traffic jam, when the blood can't move forward, what does it do? It backs up. And with left-sided heart failure, the backup goes straight into lungs. This is the congestion we're talking about in congestive heart failure. And all that fluid backing up into the lungs, that's what causes these classic symptoms. You get shortness of breath, what doctors call dyspnea. It gets especially bad when you try to lie down flat. A doctor listening with a stethoscope might hear actual crackling sounds. And in really severe cases, tiny capillaries can rupture, creating something called heart failure cells. But remember, the heart is a 2-sided pump, right? The right side has a totally different job. It pumps blood to the lungs to pick up oxygen. So what happens when that side starts to fail? A lot of the time, right-sided failure is actually a domino effect. All that pressure backing up from the failing left side through the lungs eventually just overloads the right side. It can't handle the strain. But it can also happen all on its own, say from certain lung diseases. So with right-sided failure, the traffic jam happens even earlier in the circuit. It's before the blood can even get to the lungs. So the backup happens in all the veins coming from the body. And that means fluid starts to spill out into the body's tissues. And this leads to symptoms you can actually see on the outside. We're talking about swelling in the legs and ankles. It's called pitting edema because if you press on it, it leaves a little pit. You can also see bulging veins in the neck, and the fluid backup can even cause swelling in internal organs like the liver and spleen. So let's just quickly put it all together. Left-sided failure, that's a backup into the lungs, which gives you breathing problems. Right-sided failure, that's a backup into the body, which gives you swelling. And the cause is? Well, for the left side, it's often damage from a heart attack, what doctors call ischemic heart disease. And for the right side, like we said, it's usually that nasty domino effect from the left side failing first. Okay, so what can be done about a failing pump? Well, the main goal of treatment isn't necessarily to cure it, but to help the heart out. It's all about reducing its workload and managing all those symptoms. And treatment really is a multi-pronged attack. You've got medications that help reduce the heart's workload by relaxing blood vessels. Then there are diuretics, sometimes called water pills, to help your body get rid of all that excess fluid. You can even use things like special pacemakers to help the heart's chambers beat in a more synchronized, efficient way. And when things get really serious, we can bring in the machines. For the most severe end-stage cases, that's when we turn to some pretty amazing technology. There's something called a ventricular assist device, or a VAD, which is literally a mechanical pump that gets implanted to help your own heart do its job. And of course, the ultimate solution, when all else fails, is a full heart transplant, replacing the failing pump with a new one. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, what does congestive heart failure really teach us? I think it shows us just how incredibly interconnected our bodies are. It's this delicate system where if one single crucial part starts to fail, it can send these crisis shockwaves through the entire system. It's really a powerful reminder of the amazing and maybe even fragile balancing act that's happening inside of us every single second to keep us alive.